Living in a home with poor air quality can challenge your immune and respiratory system, mental health, and productivity. Air quality has three pillars: filtration, ventilation, and humidity control. Your filtration system helps capture airborne particles on a whole home scale. Unlike air purifiers, which only service one room at a time, proper ventilation replaces stale air with new outdoor air, removing any built-up chemicals from off-gassing and CO2 from breathing. Older homes weren't built to keep poor quality air from coming in, and newer homes' tight building envelopes make ventilation so important, though it's often neglected. Humidity control creates a comfortable and safe environment, while preventing mold growth and damage to your home's structure and furnishings. The foundation of your home's air quality is airflow. Without airflow, the equipment that manages these three pillars can't function. With a professionally installed and maintained smart system, you'll have peace of mind that your home's air quality is healthy, safe, and meeting the needs of your family throughout the year. That's why we created Haven. The Haven Central Air Monitor is installed in your family's forced air system by your trusted technician. It tracks the comfort of your indoor environment while scanning for unhealthy particles and chemicals. When paired with the central air controller or a smart thermostat, the monitor sends a message to activate your HVAC equipment automatically, ensuring proper filtration, ventilation, and humidity control of your air for optimal home health. This innovative solution is compatible with most forced air systems, using Wi-Fi to add smart capabilities to your existing equipment. Transform your HVAC system into the best air cleaning system, invisible and integrated. And it's all easily accessible through your smartphone. With Haven's automation, you can carry on with your everyday activities and breathe better, knowing Haven is caring for your health. Let's turn your home into a haven.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. So we're hanging out with our good friend Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart, the Canadian, not the comedian. Am I right?
You got it. Wow. Good memory.
Absolutely. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation, Kevin. So on our previous episode, we spent a lot of time talking about air. So, we get a little confused when we start talking about IAQ. IAQ, just things to treat air. Well, what are we treating? That's really what it comes down to. Are we understanding the quality of our air? Eugene Silverstein just does this amazing analogy and educational opportunity when we start talking about what things do, right? We always talk about parts and we say, what does a part do? And Eugene simply says, well, you just read it backwards and it'll tell you what we're actually doing. So if we look at IAQ, indoor air quality, it's really just about the quality of the air that is indoors, right? So we think about IAQ simply as being, what is the quality of air inside our environment? But we also have other factors like the quality of air outside, right? That affects the quality of air and quality of life that we have indoors. So in the past, we've looked at IAQ as, all right, so I've got very dry skin and I've got very dry woodwork. I'm here in the Midwest. And so in the winter, if I have those conditions, I look at adding moisture, humidify it a little bit. But is there a baseline? And that's really what we talked about, is understanding that we need to have a baseline so that we can come up with a proper solution so that we can educate a homeowner. And you have really spent your time evolving your business to be able to get to a point of not just educating about IAQ, but measuring and showing validated information that we can pass on to our homeowner, our consumer, about the quality of the air that is in their environment. Because a lot of times as technicians, I can tell you myself, if you're a technician, if you're a residential technician and you are there assessing an HVAC system, right? We're there kind of like a doctor. We're there to evaluate the system. We're there to do preventive maintenance. We're to look for solutions and look for problems within the system. Well, our air can very much be a big candidate in our problems. So how do we properly measure? How do we monitor and measure a system, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think if anyone hasn't watched the previous webcast that we did, we really talked about what the pillars of indoor air
The
quality,
three pillars.
what they are. It's filtration, ventilation, and humidity control. So we talked about what those are, why they're important, and what sort of pollutants or measurements that relates to. And so a lot of people at that point go, okay, we do heating and cooling on a daily basis, and that brings in the bulk of our
Our work.
services
Yeah,
and revenue that we do as a company. Um, but if I want to get into indoor air quality, I'm now expanding the number of things I'm thinking about when I enter
hmm,
the home, and I need a way to be able to actually talk about this, bring it up, personalize it, and know that this is a problem that exists in the home because every home is
sure.
different.
Yeah, absolutely. Every region of the country, the world. I mean, IAQ doesn't mean the same thing for every environment. So we have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and that's why we believe monitoring really matters because if you go into a home and you're not monitoring, you're just guessing,
Yeah,
right? And there are very specific problems and there's benefits to doing this monitoring. Part of it is that you can identify and pinpoint what the problem is in that home because if somebody has a symptom, they have something wrong in their air or they're sensitive to chemicals or mold or whatever it may be, it's really easy to just recommend some generic solution, but the
right.
reality is it often won't solve the problem or won't solve it effectively unless you know what that root cause is, which only a monitor can really help you get to a definitive answer.
Sure. Well, think about the pieces of equipment that we walk up to. We don't just walk up to a piece of equipment and take a flashlight, put it up or something up against the side and listen to it, go, sounds like a bearing in a motor, maybe. No, we use tools to measure so that we can actually come up with a professional diagnosis. We don't go to the doctor and go, Doc, can you look at me and tell me what's wrong with me? And you go, well, I'm just feeling bad. He says, oh, well, if you're feeling bad, you should take this and you should take this and you should take this. And that'll probably take care of it. No, we do analysis. We actually use tools. So for a lot of us, when we're making the transition into understanding air and the quality of air, we may have to increase our arsenal of tools so that we can actually measure things. Now we got validation.
Yeah, yeah, you hear a lot about these home comfort advisors and
Yeah.
doing comfort consultations, and typically these are the techs who come in with many more tools on them, things
Yeah.
like a manometer or an anemometer, or maybe they're looking at the system and they're looking at the liquid line or suction line. They're looking at various diagnostics.
Inputs.
They could even use the handometer to say, oh, I feel airflow coming out of these registers, and I feel that it's very cold. The
Right.
evaporator cool and everything is nice and cold. We hear that the blower is working. So there's various indicators in heating and cooling, and there's various more sophisticated tools that some techs use.
Mhm.
One thing I would say is that indoor air quality is a lot less tangible than some of the stuff we deal with in heating and cooling. It's a lot more nuanced and invisible,
Right.
and therefore having the tools is even more important in indoor air quality than it is in heating and cooling. And maybe some people would argue that they're equally important, but in any case, you really can't guess at all in indoor air quality.
Right. You have to have something to go by, some type of a physical measurement.
Yeah. So some of the stuff we thought we could talk about today in that regard is monitoring indoor air quality.
Mhm.
Why should you do it? That's what we're touching on right now. And how do we bring it up with customers?
Oh boy, there's a difficult one.
Yeah.
A lot of us as technicians, we're not really trained as, and I wouldn't even say it's salespeople. We're not trained for that communication with the customer on, hey, here are solutions. It's going to take additional items. So there's going to be an additional associated cost with this. We're not really taught exactly what that looks like. So we may approach it as, oh man, I've got to be a salesperson for this. And it's really about a solution person. So anytime we have a solution, there has to be an associated item that goes along with that, right? If we say we have poor water quality, I've had that here in my own new home. You would expect that you'd have decent water. No, it's not the scenario. have very poor water quality. So what do you do about that? Do you just slam a water softener on it? Do you slam a filter on it? Or do you actually take the water to a professional to have it analyzed? And then the professional says, with this particular scenario that you have in your water, there are solutions to correct that. And now that we know exactly what the water condition is, we can show you the different products that are specific for this condition. And I'm not going to sell you a whole arsenal of different things because some of them really may be marginal in what they do for you. But because we did a proper analysis, because we took samples, we took measurements, and we were able to come up with a conclusion of the correct products to solve your situation, you're going to end up needing this solution. And of course, it's going to cost money. I wouldn't expect to have something checked if I didn't know that there was some potential costs that were going to come along with that. But I asked for that service. So if a consumer is asking for the service, if you just happen to mention, hey, would you like for me to analyze the quality of the air that's in your environment? Almost everyone's going to say, well, that would be very interesting. I'd at least like to know. Or if you already have the answers, you've already taken measurements, now you have the opportunity to go, hey, while I was here taking care of this scenario or doing this service to this piece of equipment, doing the mechanical side, I've actually also measured the quality of the air in your environment. Is that something you're interested in learning more about? And so it would change that solution, and not from a sales position, but to a solution position.
Yeah. No, I like what you said there. Specifically, that most technicians we've interacted with do not like sales, do not see
Right.
themselves as salespeople, did
Absolutely
not
not.
get into this industry because their aptitude was selling.
Yeah.
Their aptitude was problem solving and
Yeah.
mechanical in nature. And it's very uncomfortable to be in that position, to
It's a
be
different
sort of
skill
hard
set.
selling someone on something they never asked for, right? They're there because
Right.
their air conditioning stopped working and they're uncomfortable, and fix it. Like there's nothing else to it. And so
Right.
what we see is we're sort of in a unique position where 1,500 service companies have come through our system and created accounts and gotten started with our company Haven on their indoor air quality journey. And what we've seen is that so many owners and leaders and decision makers of these heating and cooling companies, they really want to jump into indoor air quality. They really have ambitions to do a lot more installation of equipment
Right.
to solve indoor air quality. And then the thing that they do time and time and time again is they put all their staff in a room, mostly technicians and service managers, installation managers, and they say, all right, go push this product. Here's this one product we selected, and you're going to go push it. And we're going to commission you if you sell 5 of these, 10
X.
of these,
Right.
And so effectively, they're trying to turn their techs into salespeople. And what we've seen, like almost 100% of the time, is that this does not work.
No, not
Techs
a
do
good
not
solution.
want to do this.
That's right.
Yeah. And so this is just not an approach that works. You will find the rare sales tech, sort of unicorn sales tech out there, who's going to do the bulk of any of those sales. So, and any of these companies that are selling generic indoor air quality solutions out there, sort of silver bullet type solutions, you're going to find that even in a bigger company, like maybe there's 50 employees in this company, probably 2 or 3 techs are doing 80-90% of the sales of those products because they're the ones who had the aptitude to get the commission. But if
Exactly.
you want to roll indoor air quality out to your entire customer base through your entire company, we find this is just not the approach that's going to work effectively.
I get that. Well, I mean, if you think about if you're just selling one product and say you get really good at selling one product, I'm very much a proponent of a business thrives because of its reputation. So if I am selling a product over and over and over and over to treat all conditions, well, hopefully it's going to catch a bunch of them. But what about the ones that it didn't? What about the consumers that purchased it because they were under the anticipation that it was going to improve their quality of life? But in fact, it really didn't change things. And sadly enough, it may have been a different product that could have resolved that for them. So I completely understand the approach of let's not push a product to improve quality. Let's measure the environment and find the correct product for our customer. That's a whole different scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we talked about in the past is the 3 pillars.
Mm.
Well, often people have problems with not one, but even two or all three pillars.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
when you say, "Hey, here's this solution," and it's it's what we recommend, but I'm not going to do any measurement. I'm not going to understand what your problem is. You're actually leaving a lot on the table.
Yeah. A lot of
First of all, you're
opportunity.
leaving, yeah, there's opportunity number one to really solve the problem.
Hmm.
So let's say, for example, uh, there's wildfire smoke, and that's coming in into the home through infiltration. That's coming in
Right.
maybe through the outdoor air damper. Well, there's one problem that filtration could help with. Um, there's also smart dampers that can shut during those events so that the smoke doesn't get in. That same customer could also have mold growing because excess humidity in the home. That same customer could have a tight home and chemicals are building up
Sure.
uh,
No VOCs.
because, yeah, not enough. The
For
rate of
sure.
ventilation isn't high enough. So
Yeah.
that whole package to solve all those problems, I mean, you could even get into building enclosure work,
Right.
blower door testing
Yeah. Now
and
we're moving into
insulation.
the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole world of indoor air quality solutions and building science, and but people just want to sell this one, $1,000 solution that solves everything. And I just think, A, they're leaving a lot of opportunity for themselves on the table, but also they're not really solving the root cause of potentially the multitude of problems that the customer is facing.
Yeah, so true. Oh, and by the way, everyone that's joining in, let us know where you're chiming in from. I'm right here in Brownsburg, Indiana. Kevin, where are you at?
I'm in Vancouver, Canada.
Aha, just north of the line. We have people chiming in from
Yep.
all over the place. So definitely hop into the chat and let us know where you're at. And glad that you're joining us today. All right, so
All right.
what's our next steps, Kevin? Let's talk about how to understand our air. So we've looked at what our conditions could be. How do we know? Like where do we go?
Yeah, so let's go through a couple of things. There's different types of air quality monitors on the market. We can look at sort of
Okay.
the approach that we've taken versus
Yeah.
other approaches, and we can look at what we call spot checks versus long-term monitoring. Spot checks have kind of been the historic way that the industry does it. But just to start off with, why care? Selling indoor air quality, as we just discussed, is really hard, but it's a big growing market.
Oh yeah.
So what we've seen is a lot of this growth that we see here, this 10 billion in projected growth by 2025, 20% of that is coming from North America. So this
Really?
this is one of the best
That
places.
is pretty significant.
Um, yeah, and customers are asking for this. So
Mhm.
81% of homeowners will make improving IAQ a priority. 62% believe their home needs improvement in that area. And so this is where air quality monitoring devices are a key to unlocking that growth for you and your customer.
Well, I can remember, right when COVID happened, I had a lot of friends that are in the sales and manufacturing side, and all of them that were in the IAQ side of things were saying the exact same thing. They had never seen anything like it before. We had the response of homeowners, consumers actually now paying attention to air quality. So all of the IAQ products in that window, that time frame of life, they just kind of disappeared. Everything that was in the warehouses were just gone because people were just throwing things at the condition, going, okay, so we understand that there are products out here that can help the air. Give them to me. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of understanding of what they were actually treating. They were looking for
Yeah.
solutions, they were finding products, but didn't really know what those products were doing in many cases.
Yeah. One other thing I keep hearing is that the past few years have just been so chaotic.
Oh,
There's been refrigerant changeovers, there's been supply chain issues. I mean, people are just trying to get parts to fix, the TXV or fix the air conditioner,
yeah.
get a heat
Get a
exchanger.
control board.
So there
Yeah.
hasn't really been time to just go, how can I do this properly? How can I get into indoor air quality properly, implement this into my company, create a process, go to market with this, find a supplier of these various pieces of equipment. It just hasn't been possible for the past few years. But what we're seeing, particularly this upcoming shoulder season, people are finally feeling a little bit back to normal
Hmm.
after
Yeah,
COVID.
I'm
There
hearing
was
that.
that kind of spike, and people are finally getting to like, all right, we got parts. We're kind of caught up on what was building up in our backlog. And this I think is the right time right now
Yeah.
to get into this.
Let's regroup on expansion and think about it a little
Mhm.
bit.
Exactly. So monitoring indoor air quality, as we talked about, and the three pillars with the undertow here of airflow.
Right.
Without airflow, you really can't
Yeah.
do any
It's
of
the
those
foundation
pillars.
for everything.
It is. And so one of the things I wanted to share here, this is kind of unique because we did this study on our own devices, and we looked at many hundreds of devices. I think it was 800 devices. 94% of devices that we looked at, these are sensors, these are monitors looking
Sure.
at indoor air quality in homes across North America, so every climate zone. And what we saw is that 94% of devices had experienced poor indoor air quality in one of these pillars for at least 30 days out of the year. That means basically,
Most homes.
at least 9 out of 10
Yeah.
homes that you put a monitor in is going to show an issue at some time of the year. So the opportunities are definitely there.
Right.
And there are problems out there to be solved. And so out of those three, humidity was by far the number one issue.
I could see that.
Now
Sure.
we're a little bit biased because, well, the population is biased to be on the eastern side of the country where humidity is higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of our devices are east of the meridian,
Okay.
where most of the population is. And so there just is a lot of humidity, at least in the summer. And then depending on how south you are, there's additional humidity, throughout even the shoulder seasons, in a lot of places like Florida or Texas.
It's still pretty high, though. When we think about that,
Um,
93% have humidity-related issues. Most people can look their system and go, my system seems to keep up. It's comfortable. But is it really?
mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is important because one of the questions we used to get is, I'm going to put this monitor in. What if everything's good?
Yeah.
And it could be good for a little bit, but there is going to be at least a month out of the year or a few months, probably the summer, where humidity is really high, or it could be the opposite, that in the winter, humidity gets really low during the winter in cold areas,
Yeah.
in northern areas.
That's us. I get them both. So yeah, completely get that.
Yeah. So this is what data can do. It can clearly depict the problem on a graph that can be shared with the homeowner and say, this is where we want you to be.
Mhm.
And by the way, this isn't what I'm saying.
Right.
This
Here's
is
the
what the
data.
EPA and ASHRAE and here's what the standard bodies are saying.
Exactly.
And you can read up on these resources from the government, from EDU, from all these different authorities, credible authorities, and you're way above that level. And so here's the types of things that can happen. And you don't have to create these resources. These resources exist. And you can talk about how high humidity could result in moisture, which could result in mold. You could talk about the effects of this
the capacity
on the home and the enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Insects love humidity.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah. So in very humid environments, you're going to see more insects, and they will come into your home and live there. In that case, there is mold spores that people are highly allergic to that can grow in that environment. And so on the dry side, there's also issues, respiratory issues, coughing, dry eyes, sore throat, that sort of thing. So we know there's sort of an optimal range of humidity.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is very clearly, we're able to define that the homeowner is outside of the optimal range. And therefore, instead of this becoming a sales pitch, it becomes an education process.
I can see that.
Of saying, yeah, this is the education. Here are the resources. You're outside of the range, objectively based on the sensor data. Would you like to do something about this? So it's a very different type of discussion, and it's much more natural because this follows the same process that a technician would follow with anything else they do. There's a problem. Here's how we can solve it.
Yeah. Well, think about preventative maintenance. How many times do we find a capacitor that is out of spec? The system could still be running, but you've recognized that a capacitor is out of range based on its manufacturer's specification. Well, it's our responsibility to inform the homeowner. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I understand that your system is working fine. We're here for preventative maintenance. I want to show you what I did find. And I know that the system is still running, but I want you to be aware that this component is out of specification. It is outside, either above or below the range that is specified as being acceptable. So I'm going to leave you with an estimate, or at least let you think about this while I'm here if you're interested. But it's my job to show you when things are above or below their rated specification. So with air quality, we're not going in saying, I want to sell you this. We're going in saying, based on your area, based on third party calculations, your home is above or below this standard, comfortable, acceptable range. And here are some solutions to that if you're interested. If I'm the homeowner and you come to me and say, hey, here is a range that your home would really like to be in. This is the most acceptable place for your quality of air. And you're here, there, wherever, and you have a solution, I want to hear what you have to say. And it's not about the price. It's not about the purchasing. It might be later, but at the moment, it's about, I have a scenario that is kind of unacceptable, and I would like to know what the solution is. I mean,
Yeah.
sounds good to
Yeah.
me.
No, that is great because a lot of people want indoor air quality
They
solutions.
do.
And point in case, they are buying stuff off Amazon, Best Buy, they're Googling this stuff. They don't know that the professional who's repairing their air conditioner is somebody qualified to diagnose and solve these types of issues for them. And instead, they're DIYing it purely because they don't know another option is available. And we did some quantitative and qualitative studies of homeowners who just didn't see their HVAC professional as someone who was qualified to do this.
Yeah.
And yet they wanted a professional
Yeah.
and often were searching, how can I assess my indoor air quality, and then finding monitors off Amazon that they could put in themselves. It wasn't because they necessarily want to become IAQ experts. It's just because they have a concern, because maybe they have a newborn or some sort of symptom, or there's something came up in their lives where they're intrigued. Maybe they got educated on the news, or because of COVID, or because of wildfires, and now they're searching for something and they can't find their heating and cooling professional as being the person who's going to solve this. But if you offer it, it's offer and decline, right? If you
That's
say,
right.
we have this capability, and now we have detected this problem, do you want to do something about it? And if you want to decline, that's okay as well. Just sign here, because we don't want to be responsible if mold does grow and you decline this dehumidifier.
Exactly. Well, and I even think about humidifiers in particular, like room portable humidifiers. Decades ago, when when I got into the residential industry, we had a lot of customers that would call, hey, I've got a portable humidifier that is not working anymore. Do you guys work on that? And well, not really. Have you ever thought about a whole home humidifier? And they're like, yeah, but they're expensive, aren't they? And how much did you pay for your last 2 or 3 of your portable humidifiers and all the pads that you've invested in those? Because once it dries out, all the calcium just sits inside for the rest of the year when you're not using it. And you come back and the thing's not working. So you go out and buy another one. How many hundreds of dollars have you wasted on portable humidifiers that all you're doing is just dumping air into a room and not even measuring how much was in the room? You're just adding moisture
Mhm.
until your skin doesn't crack anymore. And that was actually a very common complaint that we had was, I just run my humidifier until my skin doesn't crack or until water condenses on the windows. And go, yeah, but what is that number?
Yeah.
Where are you? And most people would have no idea.
Yeah, and you also have to think about the equivalency of, if you're in a bigger home, you may be humidifying a specific
Yeah.
room, but what about the rest of
Yeah.
the
A
home?
space.
And what would the cost be of having a portable humidifier in multiple rooms versus having a whole home humidifier?
Yeah.
And this applies to filtration. People go out and buy $1,000 air purifier just to go in their bedroom or just to go in their kitchen,
Exactly.
and it's like, you could have invested that much, probably that much. Let's call it 50% more, but it's
Right.
probably that much into a proper whole home solution that would have managed everywhere in the
Everything,
home, no
everyone's
matter
room.
what area. And then people don't think, oh, if I had 2 or 3 of these, you're quickly in the territory where a whole home solution would have been more
Very
effective
realistic.
because, yeah, you're moving more air, distributing it. You have this distribution system and you have this fan that you've invested in, and obviously you want to design the filtration system to be meeting the right static pressure for the system and using the right amount of surface area to not create issues. But at the same time, why not leverage that existing system instead of buying a whole new appliance, which, by the way, people turn off because it's too noisy,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Or it's blowing at them. Whereas we have designed this air distribution system that's kind of away from them and quiet and is going to be much more efficient. Why not leverage that?
I seen a little, just exactly like you're talking about, a portable air filtration system that had a big tag on it that said, now can move 150 CFM of air. And I think, oh wow, 150 CFM. How much for that 2 or 2.5 ton blower that you have on your air conditioner that you could be moving, multiple times that and still filtrating? Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought there's an opportunity to take the CFM a system can move and multiply it to get an equivalent clean air delivery rate, which is the metric that these air filters use, and say, well, this is equivalent to 3 or 4 of those room air purifiers.
Absolutely. Very, very good comparison.
Okay, so obviously you can see with this case study that it is an effective communication tool, but it does require sensors
Right.
to be installed. It requires data to be collected, logged. And so one thing we do want to touch on is there used to be a spot check type of approach to this. There's companies called Air Advice. There's various different products on the market that you bring it in the home, you take a 30-minute sample, or you leave it for a day, or whatever it may be. You look at that data, and then that becomes your diagnosis. We take a longer term approach.
Sure.
And the reason we do that is because some of the stuff we just talked about, air quality is changing every month, every season, throughout the year. Air quality is changing, even day to day, even hour to hour, day to night, weekdays to weekends. You really do want to understand holistically what's happening. And so there's times of the year where the air is going to be dry. There's times of the year where it's going to be very humid. And there's times of the year where all of a sudden there's forest fires.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
There's allergies, there's pollen in the air, right? So air quality is dynamic. That's something I really want to communicate today, is that the long-term measurement is valuable in revealing all the problems. And it's sort of a journey. It's, you can fix one problem and then something else comes up and you can address that problem.
Sure.
And it's a bit of a journey, but why not have this long-term relationship with the customer where you're identifying their problems, you're solving their problems, and you've now got this relationship with that customer.
Yeah, I love it. Long-term solutions, not temporary for this particular incident.
Exactly. And showing, now you can show, here's what
Now we can
was
trend it,
before,
log it.
here's what was after, here's the before and after. You can prove that it was effective, and you can maintain it over time.
Sure.
That's another important thing. So the next nuance here with monitoring is the room versus whole home approach.
Okay.
And it's similar to what we just talked about with, a room
conditioning
humidifier versus a whole home humidifier. So our company, Haven, has invented the first whole home indoor air quality monitor for mostly residential homes. And it actually goes in the return of the heating and cooling system, and it senses all of the contaminated air coming back in the return. And then as you clean the air, that clean air cycles back. And so you can see, are we cleaning the air as we activate this equipment? Can we achieve that clean air through the return duct? As opposed to, you would need an indoor air quality monitor in every
each
room,
space,
or at least in 2 or 3 spaces, to be able to get the same picture. So some of the advantages of the whole home approach are, it's one sensor. So you're only interpreting one set of data.
Input,
one input. It's a lot simpler. We see if there's somebody cooking in the kitchen, we see it clear as day that they're cooking. We see the particle levels. If they are cleaning in their garage, if they, the various things that are happening in the home, we can see it through the central location. Um, the next reason why this is valuable is it's bolted into the duct, and it's actually looking through the airflow of the system. When the system's turned on, it doesn't require a fan or a pump. So it is solid state. It can last for a lot longer than a room monitor
Okay.
because there's no moving
Sure.
parts. And one of the issues we see with the room ones is that they can be unplugged. They're just sitting on the tabletop.
Right.
And so, they're going to end up in a drawer. Well, the good thing is the homeowner's not going to go into the utility room, unscrew the monitor, pull it out of the duct, and put it in the drawer. And it is 24-volt hardwired to power as well. So this is something you can kind of set and forget. Maybe you come back once a year during your maintenance plan to make sure that there's not dust in the product or something. That doesn't happen very, very commonly, but it can become part of your service maintenance package to just make sure it's clean. But this is something that's going to last, instead of maybe 12 months like a room monitor, it can last 5 to 10
Oh,
years
nice.
in that home. Yeah.
So how are we collecting the data? So I know we got a 24-volt supply going to us. I've actually installed one of these myself on a Daikin system that I had a few years ago to be able to monitor the indoor air quality. Let's talk about transmission and, content collection.
Mhm. Yeah, so we want to be able to get the data off of that device. And the best way we thought possible is to connect it to the
Yeah,
internet, so connect it to the home's Wi-Fi.
absolutely.
We have a really sleek process over Bluetooth to be able to pass the Wi-Fi credentials to the device.
Hmm,
We asked for some data because imagine you're a bigger company, you have different technicians out there,
right.
there's all these customers. We want to collect
Make
things
it
like what's the
unique.
filter size,
Sure.
what sort of solutions might already exist in the home. Because when it comes time to saying, hey, here's some solutions, we don't want to recommend them something that they already
Right.
have, or we want to recommend them something that, based on that metadata we're capturing, then could actually make
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. And we had a
Um,
humidifier installed, and it's been 12 months, and all of a sudden we're starting to have a lack of humidity and an increase of of debris on filters. Oh, yeah, we got a bad humidifier pad in there. We can actually see some of those items as we're collecting data.
yeah. And the other thing is you don't have to roll a truck back to the
Oh
home.
yeah, it's
This is
huge.
something we see a lot with people who, I'd say companies, usually the smaller companies that are all about loyalty, like, we've taken care of this customer for the past 20 years or multiple generations. Um, that's great. That type of care is awesome. But sometimes the amount of back and forth to the home to take care of that customer, um, you're losing money every time you roll a truck.
Absolutely, you are.
There's an opportunity cost and an actual operational cost, the gas, the wear and tear on that vehicle, the tires, everything. And so this is good because as problems arise, or as you want to have a conversation about indoor air quality, you can just access this data remotely. You can do it through a laptop, through a computer,
Sure.
and you can send reports based on that data directly to the homeowner
Nice.
without even having to go
Yeah,
there to have
exactly.
that conversation.
Sure. Well, we talk about the labor shortage that we have as an industry, and I keep preaching we're going to struggle to fill those voids. We are a long way off from being able to catch up to neutral, let alone with positive labor. So, how can we best impact our industry? We all just work more efficiently. And
Mhm.
technology really is the tool to help us work more efficiently. We talk about remote diagnostics. This is remote diagnostics capabilities in a residential application. We've been doing it in commercial and industrial environments for decades. That's the reason we've gained so much efficiency with our technicians. We are taking with us the things that we're most likely going to need to be able to fix the job instead of getting out there, finding an issue, then having to call around, locating the parts, locating what we could need, because now we don't have our source. Because a lot of these things we stock back at our, at the company, we sell a certain line of products, we stock a certain amount of replacement parts for it, and once we get away from the shop, now we're limited to whatever resources we have in the area close to that home. So being more efficient with our time is going to be critical to help solve our labor gap. There's no doubt about that.
I completely agree. I can't see a future the way things are
Hmm.
headed without using
Technology.
remote
Yeah,
diagnostics
efficiency.
and technology to
Absolutely.
make people
Yep,
efficient.
I
If
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, if you have half the techs that are needed to service all these homes in the current process that you're using, clearly something's going to have to
Hmm.
change. There's just a shortage of labor out there. So yeah, how do you make those techs as efficient as possible to be in the places they need to be, and not just going to homes to do, inspections to try to see if there's a problem.
Right.
Like we really need to, every home should have some, and sensors are fairly low cost now. Like it would be silly not to figure out the business model to have the technology on every system that is being installed or even retrofit, to know that this is actually worthwhile to go to this home and solve the problem.
So true. So true. I love my technology, and if it provides a solution, that's good for everyone.
Yeah. The other thing I will say, just to balance this,
Yeah.
obviously we take the whole home approach. There is a room version of these indoor air quality monitors that, in some cases, sense some interesting things that we don't sense. So, for example, there's radon sensors out there.
Sure.
There's a company called EcoSense that makes a radon sensor that's quite good. There's a company called AirThings. They
Oh
also
yeah.
do radon and CO2. And what's good about those is they can go in a specific location where you care about that. Like radon comes from the earth, so putting
Put it
it
in the
down
basement
in
or
the basement makes sense. Or hey, I'm sleeping at night with my room closed up. I might care about CO2 in that specific location, and I don't want to know the CO2 across the whole home. I want to know it in this one spot, this nursery. So these do make sense to work together, and we are actually working on integrating data from AirThings and EcoSense and other types of
really
hardware
nice.
to be able to become part of our platform,
Absolutely.
because those are B2C, those are consumer focused companies.
Yep.
They're going through Amazon and Best Buy. They're not heating and cooling focused companies. And so what we're trying to do is work with them to pull their
Yeah.
data
Build a
in
hub.
to our heating and cooling focused
Sure.
platform, to help you.
Yeah. It's just more input for us.
Yeah. So yeah, we have no objection if people want to mix and match their indoor air quality monitoring. And I think we touched on this last time, but once you have those inputs, media air cabinets, filters,
Hmm.
there's a lot of ventilation solutions out
Sure.
there. Could be as simple as a motorized damper opening a duct to let in outdoor air. It could be a powered ventilator, HRV, ERV. We talked last time about balanced ventilation or negative positive pressurization. We talked about the air conditioner potentially working with a standalone dehumidifier, and as you mentioned, humidifier. So these are a lot of the solutions that once you have data, you can now bring these types of equipment into the process, your solution and services that you sell.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. If we had all of these as part of our IAQ package, what's your chance of selling this IAQ package? Pretty slim, right?
Mhm.
What if you have this IAQ inventory? And based on the data that is collected, you can now look at your entire inventory and go, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, this is a really good solution for the issue you have. I'm sure you've probably heard about all of these other things, and then they all have their different components. And I'll be happy to explain what each one of them does. But the scenario that you have based on the data that we have collected would say that this really is a solution for you. If you approach me that way, if you try selling me the entire package, I'm almost guarantee I'm going to shoot you down, no matter what product you're selling to me. If you show me that I have an item that could be corrected and that you have the right product to solve that solution, I want to know more about that. That's just me. But I find that's general when we come to, consumer purchases. Consumers, all of us, we're very concerned when we have someone in for typically a small procedure, and then they want to make sure that they're leaving with something much larger, no matter what the item is. So when we talk about this from a home health environment, scenario, it just makes a lot more sense to go, let's look at this envelope. Let's look at what you have, and let's look at the solutions that are out there. I'm going to be much more open to have that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the data and you take the home and you take the the customer's budget and you try to find the solution that works best, you're going to have people with different budgets.
Right.
And there's on one end of the spectrum, you got John Ellis, if you've heard of John Ellis out
Mhm.
there in the indoor air quality space, who can sell $40,000-$50,000 packages, for indoor air quality and heating and cooling, where he's doing everything for high-end
Sure.
customers, all the way down to someone who, really needs better filtration, and there are ways to do that fairly
Manageable.
economically.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so there is a full spectrum of what's possible here, on the solution side for different customers, for different scenarios and budgets. Um, and yeah, it's important to be able to have a couple different options, like a good, better, best, depending on that situation. This doesn't just have to be a luxury.
Yeah, absolutely.
One other thing I'll say is, one of the questions we get a lot is, well, how do we sell the indoor air quality monitor?
Yeah.
And for the people who have stayed this long, I'm gonna share something really radical. We have looked at our customers and the customers' growth, and we've sort of segmented the approach that they take. And what we found is, yeah, there's some people who are really good at just selling the monitor.
Mhm.
But by far, our category of contractors that are growing the fastest and selling the most indoor air quality equipment as major projects with their customers are the ones who are just bundling the indoor air quality monitor in with any replacement of a heating or air conditioning system.
Oh, absolutely.
And just burying the cost, because we're talking about a few $100s
Sure.
compared to potentially a $10,000 heating and cooling project, or a $20,000 in some cases. If that couple $100 inclusion of a value-added monitor, that's not something necessarily removable, but a value-added component of the quote that you're giving, and it's a differentiated quote compared to what everyone else is giving because it touches on their indoor air quality. It's low cost enough to build in. It's intriguing enough. It's actually winning people quotes and
Absolutely, it
on
would.
their bids. And in addition to that, once you get that sensor in there and you've got a few months of data after the busy season's over, you can come into the shoulder season, open up that data, look at what problems are happening, and now you can address those problems in the shoulder season when you have the bandwidth to do so.
Exactly. I read an interesting article one time that had a survey that discussed the amount of homeowners that recognizes their HVAC equipment by the brand name of Honeywell. And it was very alarming. Now, this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, but it's very alarming the amount of homeowners that recognize their HVAC system as being a Honeywell brand HVAC system, because they have a disconnect from the actual system itself. And then they only recognize the name that they walk by in the hallway. Very high. It was, 40 some percent of people recognize their system as a Honeywell.
And now it's a Nest or Ecobee.
Exactly. So too many times we make a purchase and we don't have a connection with the equipment. We could spend just as much money buying a new or used vehicle, and we will make a connection with that vehicle because we see it. Whereas with our home air quality, we may never see the equipment unless we are given the opportunity to monitor what our equipment is doing for us. Now that really brings in an interesting connection, and I've heard that discussed before, but now that you bring it up as a business profile, makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you want to know how well your system is treating the air indoors? Usually we talk about comfort. A lot of people buy a new heating and cooling system because of comfort or a lack of, because it's broken and it's time to upgrade. How many times do they look at, oh, I'm getting new equipment, and we're also monitoring the quality of the air in our environment as part of that? Now I'm intrigued. Now I have a better connection with my contractor.
Yeah, and actually we added by request, we added a feature where the homeowner gets a weekly summary of what's happening in their home every Sunday.
Wow.
And the contractor can put their logo on that email that goes out.
Man.
So now not only is the homeowner, they don't have to use an app, they're getting these weekly quick summaries of how their air is doing. If let's say that they do have a problem, every week they're just seeing this little snippet of the problem.
Tracking
So
it.
it's
It's a reminder.
You planted a seed for them that this is a problem, but also the brand of that heating and cooling company, a lot of people, they get in there, they get out, and then the homeowner forgets, who
Yeah,
was
who
that?
was
I don't
here?
know. Let's
Yeah,
go get a referral from someone
right.
else, or let's look in the yellow pages. But this is now, okay, this company, I've gotten a weekly report for the past 6 months, and I now they're top of mind, and they have this data. They're informed about my system. We're having,
A relationship.
personalized discussions. We have a
Yeah.
relationship, and but that heating and cooling company doesn't have to really do much
Hmm.
because it's just an automated weekly report.
Hmm. A lot of things changing in our industry. You're right. We talk a lot about the refrigerant transitions. We talk a lot about the technology transition, which is going to affect new equipment. But yeah, what about the transition with technology within? I mean, we have refrigerators that communicate to us. Why wouldn't we want to have an indoor environment that communicates with us as well? So I'm anxious to see how this product starts growing, because I think you're right. I think there's a shift within consumers that they are starting to understand that their heating and cooling system has more capability than what they have known in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are starting to think about loyalty and retention,
Brand
and
awareness.
yeah, and
Hmm.
and so I think something like this, you are now the most informed person about what's happening in that home now that that data exists, and you are the manager
Hmm.
of that home and that data. No one else you could call is going to have the same level of knowledge and awareness because of that connection. So it really is good for loyalty and retention, is what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, I love it. All right, that's a lot of good
All right. Well,
stuff.
yeah, and like any good trilogy, if you end up having us back a third time, I will leave a cliffhanger that
Aha, yes.
we 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 have seen on our journey here from, first of all, we need the data to be able to have the conversations, and then we need to know how to solve the problems. There's the next piece, which is, now how do you control that equipment optimally? How do you automate? How do you
Ooh.
connect all the various pieces of indoor air quality equipment together in a way that's intelligent, in a way that's remotely managed,
Hmm.
and observable? And so that's another topic we could go into if you ever have us back.
Absolutely. That's the kind of stuff we're here for. We started this entire program to be able to talk about things that are changing in the HVAC and refrigeration industry, in the building sciences, in the envelope industry, because we're all a piece of that. Jason Abjuda always talks about this tree of HVAC. Who knows what's going to be the new opportunity and the new addition to our industry? Well, right here, that's a great follow up conversation, because as we grow, we have to become more efficient and look at the things that have changed efficiency based on technology. We were just talking a couple weeks ago about how the automotive industry, I keep using these references, how the automotive industry has evolved. And we didn't completely redesign the internal combustion engine. We made it more efficient with technology and automations. And so we're seeing
Mhm.
that in our HVAC equipment right now. We're going to be seeing a lot of transitions into more advanced equipment. Well, what about understanding the quality of air within your environment? Isn't it just as important to evolve at the same way and have a better understanding of the air that is in your environment? We know that in commercial spaces, we're making new building codes all the time to assure that the air that we are breathing is quality air. And so in the residential, I think we're very close to that. We're already seeing building codes when it comes to efficiency of the homes with blower door testing, and we have requirements for air exchanges. It's all about making sure that we have a quality air in our space. So this evolution is actually very exciting for me.
Yeah, and for us as well, we're very residential
Mm.
focused. There's a lot of brilliant, proven concepts that have existed in commercial for forever that we're trying to bring in, like demand control ventilation.
Yeah.
So excited to talk about those concepts. And I used to be an electrician,
Yeah.
and I will say that the heating and cooling industry that I've gotten to know over the past decade is one of the greatest trades, perhaps the greatest trade, in terms of just the breadth and the depth of opportunity, endless learning, endless knowledge. Within a few years of being an electrician, I felt like I was
Yeah.
plateauing, felt like I I was already a Red Seal journeyman, we call it in
Sure.
Canada, and it didn't feel like there was much more to learn, really. And even when you look at the electrical trade now, not a lot has changed
No.
since then.
They've
So
had
so much is changing in heating and
Oh,
cooling.
absolutely. Electrical, we've had the evolution of some new sectors, like solar photovoltaic and charging stations for vehicles and such, but it's really the same principles, just at different scale. Whereas
Yep.
this industry, the technology is changing, the refrigerants are changing, the understanding of the environment we live in is changing, and it is definitely evolving. That's why this year at the conference, we've actually called it the evolution of education. And we truly hope to see you. Going to be there hanging out with us this year, Kevin?
Yeah, of course, I'll be there.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. So make sure to come check everything out. So we'll see you all March 25th through the 27th in Vegas. And you'll have the opportunity to not just learn about these things, but come up and hang out with Kevin and go, Kevin, I really enjoyed that. Can you tell me a little bit more? There's nothing like the opportunity to get to meet the people that change and influence an industry. And that's what we do. We all gather in one place. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
How often do you get to meet Kevin Hart?
That's exactly right. You know what? Boy, that is a great slogan right there. I might have to take, oh boy. Come to the conference, meet Kevin Hart.
Not misleading at all.
Not at all.
All right. Thanks so much, Clifton.
Kevin, thank you once again. We really appreciate everybody joining us this week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC show. Everybody had a good week.
Thanks.